Our next session titled Why Europe Matters. Please settle down. The session is chaired by Professor Ummu Salma Bava. She is the chairperson and Joe Monet Chair at the Center for European Studies, SIS. She is a guest faculty at Sushma Swaraj Foreign Services Institute, Ministry of External Affairs. With over 35 years of teaching and research experience, she is one of the leading Indian experts on European Union, EU member states, Germany, and India's foreign and security policy. She was conferred the German civilian honor, the prestigious Order of Merit by the President of Federal Republic of Germany. Over to you, ma'am. Thank you.
Good afternoon. May I request everybody to kindly settle down? This will be a relatively short session given that we have the minister coming in at about 4 o'clock. So, if everybody quickly settles down. Thank you so much. Following in the footsteps of the colleagues and the discussion which the Dean flagged yesterday on why international relations matter, we turn the spotlight to Europe to look at why Europe matters. If any of you followed the news, the events are developing at a much faster rate than the ability of leaders to keep pace with change. If anything, Europe has witnessed what I would call the geopolitical turn which has taken place. The power differential has become even more acute. The issue of a coherent and collective response is right at the top of the table. And in all of this, Europe has been that center of international politics which has even written and rewritten a lot of rules. The fact that 1648 would produce the Westphalian state, centering what we have called, for us in international politics, the idea of the primary unit in international relations. Of course, that emphasizes the state-centric perspective that one takes to international relations. And with the growth of the non-state actor, one is increasingly drawn to the kinds of contestations which take place and how a power is also wielded by those who are not formally within what we call the state. In all of this, I am very happy that 4 of my colleagues have joined. We haven't got the entire center over here. We are 9 colleagues now. And I'm very happy that our 4 colleagues are going to address 4 distinct parts, and we will then try to combine it to... We are not looking at what exactly is happening today. Even as we speak, the French President Macron has called an emergency meeting in Paris to look at what the US has done to put actually Europe out of the entire deal-making which is taking place, and that connects to the security of Europe. So we would touch upon that at some time. But my 4 colleagues are going to touch on 4 very important points, and I think that should help us take forward the discussion. Dr. Jeganaathan is going to look at the Arctic and the Nordics and increasingly what is happening over there and why the geopolitical turn is going to be extremely important. Dr. S.N. Prasad is looking at the Baltics and why the current developments there then create the kind of anxieties which we are looking at. Dr. Teiborlang is going to be looking at the Mediterranean, right? And events on that part are going to be extremely influential if Washington is going to set the agenda the way it does. And last but not the least, Dr. Sheetal Sharma is going to look at something which touches every aspect of politics in Europe, and that is the issue of refugees, migration, identity, and the return of the national to Europe. So with these words, I welcome my colleagues, welcome all of you, and I would now hand over to Dr. Jeganaathan for very brief remarks to set the stage. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you all. I'm going to cover up, I've been asked to speak on why Arctic matters. What I've been following the Europe for the last almost 15 years, more than a decade, is a sort of transition from the post-Cold War Europe, gone through a lot of evolution of its security architecture. And what we witness is the return of geopolitics. So if you ask me the straight answer to the question that why Arctic matters, I would like to argue for geopolitical reasons. Just a little bit sort of going back to the textbook to see and also some of the recent developments. For instance, citing this, why Trump makes a statement that he would buy the Greenland. This is exactly happened 100 years ago, 1925, exactly in February. The historic development happened that actually shaped the geopolitics of Arctic, and I would say it has stabilized the Arctic. I mean, this is a sort of you all know the famous Svalbard Treaty or the Spitsbergen Treaty, which is signed in the Paris Agreement. What exactly happened in this treaty? This is 1920. The treaty, the emphasis on the exclusive sovereignty to Norway, which will have this exclusive sovereignty over the Spitsbergen area, which you could see in the map. It's between the Atlantic and the Arctic, and 90% of the Greenland. The Spitsbergen is also part of the other side of the North America. What we see in the map, in the flat map, is that we ignore certain provisions. I mean, the Barents Sea, for instance, the Aleutian Islands, which used to be a critical factor in the geopolitical competitions between those days, between the Europe as well as the America and then Russia, the Tsar. The signatory to the party, very interesting fact, just wanted to flag few things and then we can draw some of the contemporary insights into to understand the current phenomena. One of the signatories, of course, the United States of America, the Russia and the United Kingdom, including the territories controlled by the United Kingdom, beyond Europe and India. The term India was mentioned in the treaty, Svalbard Treaty, plus Denmark and other Nordic countries, Norway. And the article also says, this is where we see that contemporary dynamics over the Arctic, which is shaping now, the post-1983, when UNCLOS came into existence to govern the international oceans, in terms of the freedom of navigation and how to regulate the geopolitical interest. So exactly in 1944, Russia has recognized, although Russia was not part of Soviet, they have recognized that Russia was not part of the negotiation process. When the treaty was ratified, came into force in 1925, the government of France at that time has invited the China to be to recognize the Spitsbergen territory to be the Norway's exclusive sovereignty over Spitsbergen territory, and that is where the China is now sort of interpreting the Svalbard Treaty, which is still become most of the bedrock for any geopolitical stabilizing any geopolitical region. I remember in 2013 when I was in Fudan, there was a big conference happening in China on Oceania and oceanography. And there was one scholar, he was trying to assert that the extent the China's exclusive their interest, the economic and the strategic interest over Arctic, and I could able to understand that how China interprets. As I said that since it is British India signed as part of the party to the treaty, and India claims naturally inherit the rights from the Svalbard Treaty, so we have exclusive strategic and economic interest, and we will have overall access to accessing these resources. Whereas China does not have a direct party to it, rather it has been invited by the French government to be part of the treaty, but China interprets as it is part of the Svalbard Treaty. So Svalbard Treaty governs the current geopolitics of the entire Arctic region. Now, why we have to look into the Arctic from the geopolitical point of view until 2021, this is the undercurrent which has been happening, but it is what I see. It's maybe we have overlooked to see this undercurrent and study the geopolitical interest of the actors, players. For instance, even in the post 9/11, you could see that there are parallel developments happening in the European Union to build liberal institutions, in order to assuage any sort of the geopolitical competitions over the region. Of 9 Arctic states, excluding Russia, 8 of them are members to the North Atlantic Treaty. Despite the security guarantee being assured by the North Atlantic Treaty since 1949, Atlantic Treaty, the European members of the Arctic continue to feel that the concern of Arctic being militarized by the Russia. One of the reason is that if you see the post World War II the history, the battle history over there, the extreme north west place within Russia called the Murmansk. It is one of the most strategic location and the military base which harbored almost more than 40 to 50 numbers. I'm exactly saying the numbers: 40 to 50 nuclear submarines. So far, the popular debate, in the academic circle related to Arctic is related to the climate change, the melting of glacier, the Arctic, and the impact of the Arctic, the glacier melting, and the impact on the climate change. All these sort of things that we are looking at the non-traditional point of view. But what actually driving the contemporary politics is the geopolitical, the classic 19th century struggle for dominance over the entire Arctic space. I rephrase what Mackinder's famous quote about is a classic geopolitic geologist. He explains, whoever controls the heart of the Europe would control the world. But I rephrase that whoever controls Arctic, they control the global economy. It is precisely the same reason that Trump making the statement is not just an empty rhetoric. There is a substance to what he actually says. This is not the first time that Trump is making it, or the US is climbing it. Way back in the during the peak of the World War II, you all remember there was an attempt to buy the Greenland, which is again the 80 to 90% falls into the North America, and the Americans wanted to buy, but they could not secure it. So why Greenland matters? Exactly coming back to now, exactly 100 years after, due to the melting of Arctic ice, now it has become a most feasible sea route which could connect the Europe to the US. Now, coming to the post 2021, the Russia-Ukraine conflict, there is a sort of fear, which is, this is what my observation is, that the concern emerging in the European circles, especially the Nordic countries, and also the Western European countries, the Arctic being militarized, and which has been sort of promised by the Svalbard Treaty, which is intended to demilitarize Arctic for any future, any purpose, especially from the Russian side, and also the United States. So, my final summation is that why Arctic matters for India. The popular in the academic discourse, the debate in the academic discourse is try to secure these energy resources and natural resources. But moving back to Arctic, we have exclusive right guaranteed in this Svalbard Treaty, and that we have to assert rather than just merely sort of a climbing freedom of movement or freedom of navigation in the Arctic circles, where you can do all the research purposes in those areas. Rather than we have an exclusive right that is granted from the Svalbard Treaty. So it is time to re-look into the Svalbard Treaty and interpret. Of course, we are, most of reference to the UNCLOS of 1983, not moving beyond that. So there are a lot of developments happened in the post-Svalbard when it comes to Arctic, regulating the Arctic geopolitics, and India has to look beyond the UNCLOS of 1983 and look back to the Svalbard Treaty to ensure that exclusive strategic interest which is guaranteed. I rest my case. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Thank you for emphasizing the return of classic geopolitics, how states are looking at it, and why, more importantly, the region is getting militarized and weaponized, and resources present over there, critical minerals and other resources, are going to be a point of contestation, and why we should look at who controls the Arctic and the Greenland will redesign what comes also in other areas. I turn from the Arctic, and as we move down the geography, we come down to an important set of three important countries, the Baltic republics. And given their geopolitical location, I think the developments as we speak of now, especially since 20th of January, assumes a new reality. Are they going to be part of somebody else's political future? Or will they be guaranteed within what we call the European Union? And I'm going to call upon Dr. S.N. Prasad.
Thank you, Chair. Let me first congratulate the visionary Vice Chancellor, Professor Pandit, and the President Dean, Amitabh Mattu, our senior Professor Sahani, and also the visionary persons like the first Prime Minister of India, and Pandit Kunzru, whose work and life we are celebrating in this form, academic form. And this is a festival-like scene. Congratulate to every stakeholders here. Now I'm going to talk about why Europe matters. And in the second segment, I'll come to Baltic states. Why Europe matters? Let us start from Reine Descartes. You used to call during your days, sir, I think, therefore I am. So this is the French philosopher and mathematician. And that's why when he said that, it means Europeans who had a lot of doubt after the Cold War, after the Second World War, of its own existence, were wary about its existence, because the two bipolar world was going on, and there one USSR, USSR, on the other side the USA who emerged as a power after Second World War, particularly when it dropped nuclear bomb there in atomic bomb Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Then it was just like I have said times and again, it developed a notion that he is superpower. यहाँ के हम हैं राजकुमार, आने जाने वालों जरा होशियार, यहाँ पर के हम हैं राजकुमार, ऊपर नीचे हमारी सरकार, यहाँ के हम हैं राजकुमार. That was the notion, and today what we are seeing in the context of American hegemony, this is the same thing. At the same time, when we became independent, we adopted a foreign policy based on non-alignment. We never allied ourselves with any of the power, and we believed Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina, Samay Bhavan Niramaya. And that's why Young Mam Parobeti Ganna Laguchet Sam Udar Charitang Tu Vasudai Kutumbakam. So this was the reason, and it reflected in their film songs and the story and also. So it was reflected in the film song like Mera Juta Hai Japani, Ye Patloon Englistani, Sar pe Lal Topi Rushi, Phir bhi Dil Hai Hindustani. This is, in brief, I'm just telling you that what is the confrontation between the American way of thinking and the Indian way of thinking. At the same time, wow, India in this given situation was doing very good with the cooperation of both USSR and Europeans and all. Here, European, particularly German, were very helpful for us. All the things, what you see, Kangra, Vandravali, HEC, and all the heavy industries, all the IITs, all the research institutes were were basically established with the cooperation and financial support of Germans. So we are very obliged, or rather we are thankful to the Europeans and all. But at the same time, we kept a distance from both the power, and we have been very vocal in giving our own way of any international crisis and all. But our non-alignment was not taken in a proper direction, particularly from Europe, USA, and we were taken as a enemy of Western interest. And as well, when we went for industrialization, we were in dire need for the help, American help. But America did not like our industrialization, and non-alignment policy of India was abused of. Basically, it was not taken in proper direction, and then American foreign policy was based basically on two, because America has two enemies: Germany in Europe and the USSR in Russia. So not only expansionism of Russia, how to stop communism there, but also how to deal with the German, who has been a very, very potential threat for the American emergence and all. And it happened of how to contain German policy by making German enemy, which was treated as an enemy, it became a friend of USA, and the Marshall Plan was given in order to basically to established the shattered economy as Germany. Germany was the people of Germany did not like it, but some of the people who, because it was a humiliation time of Germany after the division of Germany and all the war punishment was given to Germany. So basically Germany was not happy, but it was also a blessing in disguise. It took as basically the whole humiliation. Europe, not only Europe, but a global humiliation will come to an end when it allied with America in the fall and accepted Marshall Plan. And then why? Germany has, under the leaders of Germany, Europe has always been exploited by USA for meeting its own foreign policy interests and all. And today what you are seeing, Europe is facing a big problem of its existential problem. And today, yesterday only, all the leaders, big leaders, has met under the French President Emmanuel Macron, and not only Macron, but Keir Starmer, Olaf Scholz, Giorgia Meloni, Donald Tusk, Pedro Sanchez, almost all leaders of major European countries have gathered there to deal with this situation. This is a challenging time. This is the existential problem for the whole European Union as such. So here, geopolitics, which has been the bane of European politics, which has been basically changing the area of influence, the politics of Europe, not only Europe, the global politics. So this is a time when we should take care of what's happening in Europe and why Europe matters today. This is not Europe alone, but it's going to have impacts on all the foreign policy, our economy, polity and all. So we have to, as a conscious citizen of Asia, South Asia particularly, we have to be very careful what's happening, and we have to be very alert and play a big role in giving it a good shape. Thank you.
Dr. Prasad, thank you for drawing on history to put geopolitics into perspective and to draw our attention to the contestations and cooperation which has existed on both sides of the Atlantic. We'll come back to Baltics when we go into discussion. I think moving down from the Baltics, as we come towards the Mediterranean, the challenge couldn't be even more obvious, and geopolitics and the theaters of war which is happening both in Ukraine and between Israel and the Hamas resonate very differently on the eastern flank and the southern flank of Europe. I'm going to call upon my colleague, Dr. Teiborlang, to address some of the challenges which comes in. Two important points to flag is in 2015, Europe saw the first wave of a very large refugee crisis, would lead to rewriting some of the rules on asylum and migration. And then subsequently now, as the war in Ukraine has come, war has come back to Europe, but we've also seen that it has catalyzed Europe. How does the Mediterranean look?
Thank you, Chair. So I'll go straight away to, of course, that we see that Europe matters, but again, when we look at a specific region like the Mediterranean, we see that the region matters for Europe, particularly in the sense that when you take from what the European Union has, what it calls the Mediterranean policy, the EU Mediterranean policy. So in that sense, yes, the Mediterranean matters a lot to Europe itself, but when we talk about the Mediterranean for Europe, it encompasses all the three regions of North Africa, the Middle East, and the southern part of Europe. So today, in the official EU Mediterranean policy, for example, like the Union for Mediterranean, it constitutes about 43 countries belonging to the members of the Mediterranean partners. So in that sense, it's a very important region. More so, this region is important for numerous of reasons. It's a region for Europe. It's a region of 500 million consumers, which account also for about the whole Mediterranean accounts for about 10% of the global GDP. And together, Mediterranean accounts also collectively of about 10.5 trillion US dollar. So that is the Mediterranean. But if you look at the Mediterranean itself, though the sea, what we call the Mediterranean Sea, constitutes just 1% of the water surface on the globe. Yet this region is the busiest waterways in the world. It's the busiest waterways in the world. It transports almost about 20% of the global maritime trade. That itself is important. Or if you take just for the example of the Suez Canal itself, the Suez Canal constitute about 12% of global trade. So in that context, the Mediterranean is important. But out of this context that we put on these data, the Mediterranean especially is also a region of highly contested. Yes, it's diverse. There are regions, sub-region is a space of contestation of among various powers. The powers that constitute regional players from Turkey to Israel and the others, and to external players that constitute of great powers that include recently for the last probably more than a decade of China entry into the Mediterranean. So this has become very important. But perhaps the most important aspect of the region lately is that on the security issues. And I'm sure that Dr. Sheetal will highlight on migration, but we see that migration is one of the major highlights of the security concern of Europe. What we see is the post 9/11 onwards, especially we take as a landmark, but of course, migration as an issue to Europe has been since the end of the Cold War, immediately at the end of the Cold War, where we see migration no longer, migration seen more in the context of security. So that is one part. But then apart from migration, we see also that the Mediterranean is a hub of energy region. So 65% of the energy traffic to Europe passes through the Mediterranean. So it becomes an important area for Europe. And also the Mediterranean in terms of renewable energies, in terms of clean energies, is a lot of investment in the region, particularly in the southern part of Europe and the Mediterranean region. And along with this, then we have interstate dispute in the context of Turkey, Cyprus, and Greece on the gas and oil exploration in the Mediterranean, which I think in 2023 that came out as one of the flashpoint in that region. So that itself is also an important way to look at the region. And to conclude this, yes, the European Union has a numbers of Mediterranean policy to it. But let me cross it. How does it matter to us, to India? Yes, to India also the Mediterranean lately is a very important region. I think we should see in the last 10 years, probably in the last 10, 15 years, the engagement in the Mediterranean, it becomes more important, particularly with in Europe with Spain, Italy, and Greece as the important partners that India seeks to strengthen its diplomatic relations. And the Mediterranean also holds around, I think, I don't exactly remember the number of the diaspora, but it holds quite a good number of diaspora of the Indian diaspora in the Mediterranean, with Italy as the largest share. One is that, and then of course, when we take again India and the Mediterranean, that why the Mediterranean country is important to India, maybe you can look just the last year or two with the development of India-Greece relation. So that itself shows that the back-to-back visit of the Prime Minister of India to Greece and Greece Prime Minister to India, and the IMEC, and a host lot of discussions that ranges from doubling the trade between India and Greece, or regarding the migration and mobility, all these put us that, yes, the Mediterranean is an important part. For India, the Mediterranean, European Mediterranean, is not just for Europe, access to Europe, but again, for India, it is important to the region of the Middle East as well as North Africa, which probably we lost, or we just gone sidetracked in the post-Arab Spring. So that way, yes, there is a lot of synergy among the European Union, the member state of the European Union, on the Mediterranean policy on one hand, as well as European countries that are member of the European Union with India in terms of looking at the Mediterranean in a different way and look at it as an important region that it's important not only to Europe, but as well as in the context, like in the case of India. So that's all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Teiborlang. Thank you especially for emphasizing the IMEC, which launched with so much of fanfare and seemed to have just been bombarded out of existence on 7th of October in 23, when the war took place and began between Israel and Hamas. And I think with that, you flagged certain critical issues. We'll come back to that. I want to draw my colleague, Dr. Sheetal Sharma, in. Europe, Dr. Sheetal is going to address, but I want to flag two things. One is, while the rest of the world turned towards the national in 1945, and we've looked at it and discussed, Professor Sani, I got a bit of the earlier discussion on the hierarchy of states and centrality of Europe to those discussions. Europe, in what Robert Cooper would call, will move postmodern. The space where you had the states coming together to pool sovereignty, unprecedented, in terms of how power can be shared when power is defining what states do. They were able to transcend in the sense of what I would say is the notion of competition, to put competition outside and try to find ways to address a geopolitical reality where power had post-45 moved to the two ends, which was the rise of the US and the USSR. But Europe did not contend to sit over there. In 1992, created the European Union, creating a common foreign and security policy. 2010, the Lisbon Treaty, creating a legal entity. And then when you thought that it would move into even more rarefied realms of sharing sovereignty, we have, as you look at Europe, you see the return of the national. And the return of the national with the coming of the far right all across Europe. In fact, as we speak, we have elections in Germany on Sunday. And the AfD is polling 20% currently. And on Monday, it'll be 3 years of the war in Europe in the sense of Ukraine. I invite all of you also to a panel discussion which will take place in the school on Monday. But with that, Dr. Sheetal Sharma, the return of the national, and what does it mean for Project Europe, and why do we need to look at Europe?
Good afternoon, everyone. Let me do justice to the mandate I have been given in 10 minutes. I wanted to start with migration and identity, but since Chair has added... Pardon?
Less than 10. We are in the time.
Okay, less than 10 minutes. Since Professor Bava identified that there was a movement from modern to postmodern and then a slide towards nationalism, how do we look at this? Let me unpack this sociologically for you for the reason that why Europe matters first of all. And when I say why Europe matters, there are two ways to understand this. The one is the manifest part of it, that why it matters, and the other one is the latent part of it. When I say, and I'll integrate the modern and postmodern also, and there is some statistics for you to look at very quickly, I'll just tell you that why it matters. Now, if you look at the rate of migration or the data related to migration, even if it is a problem or not a problem for a while, let us keep that debate aside. Why Europe is a magnet for people from all over the world? There are three types of migration or category of people we can see, in the sense that there are sending and receiving countries. The sending and receiving countries can be classified on the basis of a general trend of internationalization because of globalization and international migration. The second component of the first category only is because of Europeanization. That is, from east to west, west to east, there is a movement, intra-European movement and intercontinental movement. The second is the ex-colonial countries which are sending people to Europe, such as South Asia, China, South Asia, India, Pakistan, and some of the Southeast Asian countries. The third category of people or the migrants we can identify, people from the war-torn countries. Vana region basically. And that does not include the people from other parts of the world, but primarily refugee crisis has been seen as originating because of massive exodus of people from these countries. Now, these three category of people have a different kind of connection with European countries. At the same time, the kind of problems or advantages that they bring to continental Europe. But let us see that what pulls them there. You have been thinking about a lot of push or pull factors, but let me read out few things for you. For climate change performance index, Europe is 17th among 192 nations. QS ranking, it is 59 out of 100 points, whereas I have list for India also, but time is a constant, so I'll just go through Europe only. The passport index, third place. The global innovation index, 7 out of 10. Global hunger index, it's 6 out of 10. Global competitive ranking, 6 out of 10. The list goes on. If I talk to you about transparency, freedom of press, education, freedom, equality, liberty, gender equality, employment, everything. If I take just gender equality for a while, last 10 years, the top 5 countries have been all the Nordic countries or the European countries changing positions among themselves. So you can identify that what is manifest that attracts you there. There has to be something goodness. There has to be some attraction. There has to be a gravitational pull for which Europe attracts you. This manifest has its root in latent. And that is what Professor Bava was discussing about the transformation from, I would add another stage to it, from tradition to modern to postmodern. How did this go? I haven't even started properly. How did this go? Once thought about putting tradition aside, Europe developed modernity. I would say it in this sense, modernity or modern values. One of the turning points in history about is French Revolution. Let me begin by that, by saying that freedom, liberty, equality, fraternity, all these things brought a transformation in the traditional outlook, modernity established, and then on the basis of the methodological investigation of those modern values comes the postmodernity that challenges some of the drawbacks of modernity by not demodernizing Europe but supermodernizing Europe in the sense of postmodernity. So the latent, the intellectual, the philosophical revolutions, the ideas, the worldview, the perspective, the scientific temper, whatever you may call with as many assonance as possible, Europe became an attraction for all sorts of people, whether intra-European migration or international migration, Vana region, conflict-driven, whatever. Now what? When migration is happening at such a rapid pace, there has to be some consequence, positive and negative also. Now we tend to highlight more on the negative ones because it is also assuming a proportion which is leading to human rights and humanitarian crisis at some stages. 2015 is the point where there were very disturbing pictures of some of the migrants drowning, and even a small boy called as Alan Kurdi, his body was shown swept across the shore. Now, how do you manage this? How do you manage this, and what implications it has on identity? I give you one small instance. European Union decided to have a quota, that would be given to migrants. Germany was quite open enough to receive 1 million migrants. But this quota, Estonia had a small quota of only 200 people. European Union decided Estonia, and this quota is decided on the basis of their economic health, already existing asylum applications, their economy, and the number of migrants already settled in terms of percentage and ratio. There was a crisis in Estonia, and there was a bike rally that was taken out in the city in order to oppose that EU cannot impose a quota of 200 people on us. Poland was given a quota of 5,000 people. But Poland made it very clear that we want 95% of them to be Christian and white, and that too Catholic Christians. Germany was fair open to 1 million people, whosoever comes, because of the various reasons. But somewhere the issue of migration did not just create a problem for the union, but within the union also and within the countries. Now, when you see or identify or try to analyze methodologically these problems, they can be classified into n number of problems: the economic, the social, the political, cultural, psychological, and even up to the extent that people, those who see a backlash, or those who want to express their resentment out of this, they are also carrying out lone wolf attack, or somebody who sees, the examples that you see, examples of terror acts related to terror. Now, these are the issues which are relating to how do we manage the crisis of cultural identity. I have to wind up, so let me just finish it in another 60 seconds. Now, how do we manage this identity, and why Europe will continue to matter to us? Given the shift on the global chessboard right now and Trump 2.0, Europe will still remain a mature, civilized continent in order to attract people because of the value it espouses. It is a kind of generation that has established the fundamental modern institutions and the worldview, outlook, structure, patterns, trends, whatever, as a normative actor. No matter how many times, how hard you want to ruffle this apple cart, it will shake. But Europe will still pose some amount of stability and calmness in the global scenario. You may say because it's a waning power, that is the reason. We can debate on it. You can say because it is no longer as powerful as US or China is, it is also debatable. But at the same time, what Professor Bava started by saying that, from being belligerent nations, undergoing 2 world wars, bloodshed, at least the lessons from competition to collaboration have showed the world that cooperation, collaboration is the only way to survive and sustain humanity. Otherwise, things can also slip into the mode of 3rd World War. So that is why Europe matters, because of its latent and manifest both the powers to attract people across the world, if not attract, at least guide the world the other way around. Thank you so much.
Well, that's where, when you have a nice cohesive center, you can really expect everybody to jump in, because we're under time pressure. I would like to quickly open up for Q&A, and I pick up a point what Dr. Sheetal Sharma finished off with, the normative actor. And while there is the normative turn in Europe, there's also, it draws attention to what, for us as students of international politics, we're always talking about, does values override interests, or do states camouflage interest within the conversation on values? Because how would you look at EU's turn towards China? How does that explain when it talks about human rights to other parts of the world? But I'm going to leave you with all these imponderables and open the floor for discussion. Is there a mic over there, or would you step up to the mic on the corner of the table? Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation, professors. My name is Dorje, and I'm from DAD, PhD first year. I have 2 questions. The first one I open to Professor Sheetal. So we have seen talks about deregulation to speed up AI in US. In Europe, the Draghi competitiveness report recommends similar actions to boost productivity and innovation. But it also might compromise Brussels effect, as they say, or the European power to set norms. So which direction do we see this heading? And my second question is for Professor Jeganaathan. What happens to a treaty like NATO that facilitates collective defense when a member like US makes claim on a founding member's territory?
Yeah, I have a comment actually, not a question. First to Professor Prasad. I think you have rightly highlighted the geopolitical complexities or challenges which the EU currently facing. The problem is because, as a German geopolitical thinker called Haushofer once stated, they are not able to understand the concept or context of using geopolitics. So it is the time for the European leaders to understand what is actually geopolitics. Otherwise, they wouldn't have fought with Russia, especially because knowing the fact that they are going to suffer much. Secondly, my comment on Professor Sheetal Sharma's view that European Union is a normative power, but look at why European Union played a significant role because of its nature of trading pattern. Europe used to dominate the colonial trading system. That is why it used to espouse most of these normative ideas. I think these normative ideas have relevant for only European continent, but it cannot be applicable to other continents. For example, democracy promotion, which is again a agenda setting mechanism by EU, but it cannot be applicable to global south countries. Third point is that regarding Mediterranean, okay, please.
I'm sorry, we are under time pressure and need to wind up and have the hall ready for the minister's arrival. May I quickly request the colleagues, Sheetal, would you like to start?
Nalin, thank you for that comment. And when we say values, they are not just 5 or 6 in the sense, because there are philosophical aspects behind these values and how they have come into existence. If human rights, liberty, freedom, these are universal values, their local manifestations is different, and that's what is the idea of freedom. Say, for example, if freedom of women, equality of women, if they are applied in African countries, East Asia or in West Asia, they have a different manifestation. So the problem of IR, sociological theory, or any other social sciences, that incommensurability of the paradigm, that how do we measure that idea. But somehow, in order to do justice to the time constraint, we say that the values were say even through the process of colonialization, because they had power at that point of time. So they were able to spread these values. But that does not deny the fact also that these values were not present in the local cultures where they went to. And in fact, if we talk about India, they were always there in different form, although not academically identified as these values. So one is that it is about the modern values that we talk about. And this brings me to another aspect if we talk about the idea of culture, because what we understand with culture is something which is related to religion, spirituality, and the other aspects, the mystic or the esoteric aspects of the Indian culture. Whereas when we talk about Europe now, the tradition meant religion, but the modern now means capacity building, empowerment of women, liberty, democracy. So their idea of even the cultural diplomacy that they talk about now, cultural diplomacy in the sense of as a soft power or a normative actor, the idea of values have changed. The idea of culture has changed. It is no longer spreading their ideas of religion or spirituality or going back to the eternal truth, but it is about now empowering the communities, development, and all these which are the modern Millennium Development Goals or Sustainable Developmental Goals, but they are all woven around science and the modern logic. There was a question, I think.
We'll take up on the competitive thing. One second, please. A quick point on NATO.
I just be very brief. What will happen to NATO or what happens to NATO? I think my observation that NATO minus US will lose its, I would say, relevance. NATO minus Europe, the European members, will lose its purpose. That's it I wanted to say. No.
Okay, Nalin, basically, I intended to speak on politics, basically, which is my area of teaching, but I was told just we have 5 minutes and speak what you like. And I took it as an opportunity to highlight the ongoing thing of JN. Baltics can be taken as an example to warn the European Union. This thing, what is happening today, is going to happen because Baltic being the victim of Russian revisionist policy and all, they have been it has been watching the happening there both in European Union and USSR, Russia. But European Union didn't take it seriously, and they all relied on the might of USSR as a NATO leader. Today, when NATO has now, Trump has already declared NATO is, redundant now. UN has become a talk shop, and we are not going to fund these kind of unnecessary things and all. Then European Union is at sea now, and that's why when you talk about geopolitics of Europe, which has been defined by Caslon and all, now it is geopolitics which geopolitics they will adopt. Whether they will still keep on aligning with USSR, who have become a conspirator with the convenience of the Russia now. What will be the existence of the European Union now, when they all are facing a lot of problems like migration, refugees, terrorism, and Eurozone, and also right-wing party emergence and all? Then this is the real question of existence of European Union. So geopolitics had to be refined here. And here, our experience is that we have to be very violent, because it is not Europe. There is China as well. There is other power also. They are posing threat. And just suppose all the major powers, economic, which having economic might, Russia, America, and China get allied, basically they together. Then what will be the existence of other, what you call rational and Viksit Bharat, so-called Viksit Bharat? What will happen to them? So that's basically, this is the collective effort of the so-called emerging or third world or the developing country and so-called developed country to come together and face this challenge collectively. This is my take.
Thank you so much. Tibor, any closing comments? Just one quick line.
Maybe I can skip that.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. I would, on behalf of the center, as a chair, let me also, formally record my thanks to the Vice Chancellor for supporting the Kunzru Memorial Lecture. This is the second year we are having it back to back. To the Kunzru Memorial team, Professor Preeti Singh for leading it. And thank you all for being here and your attention to listen to Europe. As I said, on Monday, it will be 3 years of the completion of the war in Ukraine. We will be having a panel discussion looking at endgame Ukraine. Thank you so much.